Every spring, millions of people eat unleavened bread and lamb at Passover. Here's the strange thing. What does bread have to do with lambs? These come from completely different food traditions, completely different ways of life. The answer reveals something profound about how ancient Israel invented itself as a people. On one side, pastoral shepherds, people who moved with their flocks across the landscape. On the other, settled farmers working barley fields. Each group had their own springtime rituals, their own ways of seeking divine blessing. To understand how these merged into Passover, we need to go back before Israel existed as a unified people. First, the pastoral ritual. Semi-nomadic shepherds across the ancient Near East sacrificed the first lamb born each spring. The purpose? Secure divine blessing and protection for their flocks in the coming year. This wasn't arbitrary timing. Spring meant lambing season, new life emerging, vulnerable, needing protection. The sacrifice acknowledged dependence on divine favor for survival. This practice existed long before anyone called themselves Israelite. Second, the agricultural ritual. Farmers offered the first barley harvested in spring. They ground it quickly into flour and baked it before it could ferment, before it could rise. The purpose? Secure divine favor for the rest of the harvest. Offering the first portion acknowledged that the entire harvest belonged ultimately to the divine. Again, tied to nature's rhythm, the spring barley harvest that sustained settled communities. Many scholars believe Israel formed from diverse groups, including both farmers and shepherds living in Canaan. When these groups merged into a single people, their rituals came together. Two springtime practices, two different ways of life, now celebrated by one community. But something remarkable happened to these rituals. Israel didn't just combine them, they transformed them through a process scholars call historicization, taking rituals tied to nature and reinterpreting them through historical events. Instead of keeping these as nature festivals, Israel connected them to a specific historical event, liberation from Egypt, the lamb's blood. Now it's the blood that protected Hebrew homes from the angel of death. The unleavened bread. Now it's because the Hebrews fled so quickly the dough couldn't rise. The spring timing. Now it marks the anniversary of liberation, same ritual elements, completely transformed meaning. Nature rituals became history rituals. The question shifted from what season is it to who are we as a people? Why does this matter? Neighboring peoples, Canaanites and others, celebrated similar springtime festivals. They offered first fruits. They sacrificed animals. The practices looked alike. But by grounding rituals in their unique story, Israelites created distinction. Their neighbors' rituals remained focused on nature cycles, fertility, seasons, cosmic order. Israel's rituals now answered a different question entirely. Not how do we align with nature's rhythms, but who are we and how did we become a people? This pattern, historicizing older practices, recurs throughout biblical literature. It's Israel's distinctive contribution, making ritual about collective memory rather than cosmic cycles. When you see Passover, you're seeing layers of meaning. Ancient agricultural practices at the base, pastoral traditions woven in, historical narrative transforming everything. Each layer adds depth without erasing what came before. Understanding this helps us read biblical texts with greater nuance. This pattern appears elsewhere. Sukkot began as a harvest festival. Farmers living in temporary booths during the grape harvest. Through historicization, it became about wilderness wandering after the Exodus. Shavuot started as the wheat harvest celebration. It became the anniversary of receiving Torah at Sinai. Same transformation, pre-existing ritual, reinterpreted through historical narrative. creating identity-forming practice. Once you see this pattern, you notice it everywhere. Historicization reveals how communities create identity through reinterpreting inherited traditions. The genius isn't in inventing something from nothing, it's in transformation, taking shared regional practices and infusing them with particular meaning. Israel's springtime rituals looked similar to their neighbors. The interpretation made them distinctive. This is how cultures differentiate themselves, not by rejecting the past, but by telling new stories about inherited practices. Memory becomes identity. Ritual becomes history.